We had a feeling that sooner or later something's gonna break. We were hoping something's gonna break. It was really overwhelming, but there was a sense of joy. Taking chunks of it, you really felt like you're contributing to the fall of the regime. My name's Hynek Bures, and I'm in my 50s, and I was born in Czechoslovakia, actually in Slovakia. It was in central Slovakia, in the mountains between the two major mountains regions in Slovakia. It was a beautiful place to live, beautiful place to grow up. We were right next to the river Hron, and we had mountains on every side of the village. It was actually quite rural, very close to nature, and we were in the forest every day. During 1960s there was industrialization, so there was quite a bit of heavy industry, actually, all kinds of metalworks and stuff. So my parents actually worked in a factory that manufactured heavy machines. My parents actually are originally Czechs. At home we spoke Czech, and in the school and playground we spoke Slovak, and it was not a problem, and never realized there is a difference. They moved to Slovakia to get a job, but eventually they wanted to move closer to their families. So we moved back to where my father was from. It's a small town called Bílovec in today's Czech Republic, close to Polish border actually. At the beginning it was a little bit hard for me to actually fit in, because I grew up in Slovakia. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. So it was a big change for me. Yeah. It was quite typical for the era, the socialistic era. A lot of industry, big road through the middle of the town. It was just the pass-through point between two bigger cities, and close to Soviet base, and actually more than one, and that's how it was. Yeah, there was a presence for sure. There was an airport. It now serves civilian aircraft, but back in the 70s, 80s, it was flying. The main runway and the main infrastructure was actually dedicated to Soviet army, and so when we went places, there would be, there were other bases, of course, and there would be signs, do not enter. If you did enter, let's say you went to the forest, because the forests were beautiful, Soviet soldier with a machine gun would walk you out of there, and we saw those soldiers occasionally. Then there was a sign, do not enter unless you are a citizen of Czechoslovak Socialistic Republic. My parents made sure that I understood what it was all about, and yes, it registered that it was occupying an army, and they were not us. There were people who were completely unaware, who went through life because that's life, that's how life is, and there were people who subscribe to it, actually. So even young people, just like in any other regime like that, we had there were organizations that tried to indoctrinate children. So there was an organization called Pioneers, and organization called what would be the translation, Socialistic Youth or whatever, that tried to indoctrinate you, and when you entered it, which was mandatory, voluntary, when you entered it, you had to actually pledge allegiance to the regime. So it was not. It was obvious to anybody who put it together that what it is, the indoctrination. My family was not subscribing to by any means to the socialistic ideology. My parents were big believers in what happened in 1968, when there was an attempt in Czechoslovakia to reform the socialistic regime, and they were very disappointed that when it was crushed by the Soviet army arriving. So for them, that was the goal, was to reform to the socialistic regime. Yeah. For me, it was, I wouldn't say hate, but I would say we didn't like the soldiers. We didn't identify with them, and it actually created resentment to Russians, to anything Russian. If you have tanks in your backyard, you won't like the nation. We've seen so many things that, or as children, we've seen so many things that we had to do, and we're questioning why is it that we are doing stuff like every, I don't know, 3 times a year in school. We had a training exercise that was basically preparing us for military attack, and preparing our gas masks and labeling them with our names on them and having them stored, and making visits to chemical attack shelters and nuclear attack shelters, and so that actually makes you not think about politics, but think about why are things happening. When I entered high school, I actually wanted to be a vet, wanted to be a veterinarian. Before I entered high school, I thought a pilot would suit me, but then I realized with glasses it was not possible at that time, so that went out of the window. And as I was in the high school, I was considering what to do, and I really wanted to focus on some sort of science. I was torn between theoretical physics and math, and finally math and computer science were the choice that I made. Actually, the high school that I went to was a school for math and science, so it was not your typical high school. There was also the classes we called normal classes that did not involve that much math and science, but overall this was a very prominent school that receives incredible amount of attention and funding. Our school had a huge new extension because the head of the school was very politically connected. He was head of the Communist Party for the whole region for a few years, and then became head of the school. So he had a lot of connections, and he was able to get a lot of funding. So we had brand new gym, we had brand new library, we had brand new everything. We had computers. We had computers in 1980s. So for us it was so the high school was extremely well equipped and extremely good. Yeah. So that's not a typical experience from a high school. In high school, I actually really liked the technology. I spent countless hours in the computer lab. I like reading. I actually read everything that I could get my hands on. My parents have a very big library, and they had everything from Tolstoy to prohibited authors of Czechoslovakia. Yeah, they held to the books. Of course, many of them were moved out of libraries and bookstores and stuff. But yeah, even though we had very prominent high school, so we could do a lot of things that other high schools couldn't. We still had very strict dress code. You have to cut your hair, that you cannot wear jeans, that you are not allowed to do a lot of activities, and that you are required to do a lot of activities like going to May Day parade, where presence was mandatory, and things like choosing 2 foreign languages voluntarily, whichever you want, as long as one of them is Russian, and things like that. And otherwise, I thought almost for sure that communist Czechoslovakia or socialist Czechoslovakia is not the place I want to live. I knew if the regime doesn't change, I will not stay.
So then how did you end up in Berlin?
In Berlin, in high school we had exchange program with similar math and science high school from Dresden, Germany. And I went to, they came to visit. We went to visit. There was a bunch of students that were selected to be part of the exchange program. And one of the students who came, Frank, actually we became friends and pen pals, and we were exchanging letters. And I asked him if I can go to Dresden for a few days when I have break in the fall, and he said yes, I can stay at his place. And when I talked to one of my classmates, he said it's a great idea. So the two of us went, and my classmate had family in Berlin, so we took the train to Dresden, spent a few days, and then took train to Berlin and spent a few days there, and that's how we ended up in Berlin. It was not that different actually from Czechoslovakia. It was what you would call, if you saw it today, you would think it's drab and grey and very brutalist, but at that time it was normal. The public transport was great, I have to say. That was one thing that it was really amazing. The only thing we knew is that we should not come too close to Berlin Wall because we can be shot. So we were thinking we will be careful not to go there. But other than that, we had a plan to go up on the observation deck of the TV tower and to see the Brandenburg Gate, and that was the plan. We didn't. In fact, we never made it up on the tower. We never went sightseeing because when we were in Dresden, we saw on TV, on radio, news that there are protests, as radio said, illegal protests in Berlin, and the police is dispersing them, and those few hooligans who are there, which turns out to be tens of thousands of people, have been pushed away from the Brandenburg Gate and places.
What did you think when you heard that news?
We have to see it ourselves. We had a feeling that sooner or later something's gonna break. We're hoping something's gonna break. This was the fall of 1989 when things were happening. Things were turning around in Europe, and it was exciting. It was just interesting. It was something that we had to see. In fact, when we got off the subway close to where things were happening, we had a hard time getting out because the crowds were so big. The crowds were everywhere. Everybody was there. And when we pushed towards the Brandenburg Gate, we saw people from West Berlin, which is unusual because there was a wall. They were actually on top of the wall, and the police with water cannons and batons and stuff were trying to push them down, but people just kept coming. I didn't get on top of the wall, no. We were just going wherever everybody was going, trying to see what's happening, trying to ask people what is going on. Yeah. The first day when we were there, we actually couldn't get all the way close because there was police guarding it, and it was hard to penetrate. It was really overwhelming, but there was a sense of joy in the air because people knew this cannot last. In fact, at one point, people are singing and celebrating and doing all kinds of things. At one point, a crowd of young people in their probably 20s ran through the street, ran to the wall. They helped each other jump over the wall and ended up in West Berlin. And police couldn't do anything. They just couldn't do anything. The soldiers, many of them were probably just, young recruits. They looked like they don't want to be there. They had their machine guns and they were just, in my opinion, hoping that nobody will order them to start shooting, because they really looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Of course, we came the next day. This was happening all over several days. And that was the day when we learned that the Berlin Wall will be pulled apart that day. Things were changing at the time, and the regime was finally giving up to thinking that there will be a crane and they will pull apart that block out of the Berlin Wall. We had to go. We had to go and see it. We have been there all day long. We did basically nothing else. We went to get food and stuff, but other than that, we were just on the one stretch. In fact, I didn't see anything else from Berlin than the part where we stayed, the train station, and then this little piece of land next to Brandenburg Gate. I was on the bottom, and I was actually chopping up chunks of the Berlin Wall. There were people with spray cans doing graffiti, which was unheard of. We were actually surprised there were graffiti on the other side of the Berlin Wall when we saw it. That was, why not? But this side of the Berlin Wall, it used to be gray. It was no longer, and everybody just wanted to get rid of the symbol of oppression. It felt extremely symbolic. You really felt like taking chunks of it. You really felt like you're contributing to the fall of the regime and to dismantling it. It really felt like dismantling it. Yes, people were ecstatic. It was excitement like you rarely see. It was a feeling that new time is ahead. That something completely different is ahead. Of course, wiser people at that time warned that it's not going to be that simple. That things are going to be more complicated, but none of us listened to that, and it was just excitement. I wanted a chunk of the Berlin Wall, so I walked to the wall, and people were chiseling. So all you had to do was ask somebody, and they would lend you their hammer or a chisel, and you can pry a piece of the Berlin Wall, no problem. And nobody was upset at anybody. Nobody minded the crowds. Nobody was saying anything about so many people. Everybody was willing to lend a hand. Everybody was, if somebody wanted to climb over, there was or on the wall, there was always somebody giving somebody a lift. To a stranger, not a problem. Everybody was just open. It was total euphoria. As it happened, the next day we were able to cross to West Berlin. Initially, we were not allowed to go through the opening in the Brandenburg Gate. There was more of a ceremonial thing, the pulling the wall. They opened another border crossing. And that was actually on a train station, on a subway station. So we actually took subway to that station. The subway actually goes through West Berlin. So the subway actually goes underneath the West Berlin. You see the barricaded. There are like 3 stations that were barred completely. So the train goes through them, and you see the bars, and you see the rundown station that hasn't been maintained for who knows how many years, 40 years at the time. And it took us to another station where we can come out and actually cross to West Berlin on foot. All we had to do was to show our passport. We didn't show the picture in the passport. We just showed up the passport, and they were waving us in. As we were crossing the border, there were some volunteers in the West Berlin, and they were giving each of us like 5 or 10 German marks, because we couldn't afford to buy coffee, of course, in the West. That was my first foray to the Western country ever, and we were overwhelmed. We were absolutely stunned what the world can look like. Where we crossed, there was actually a memorial to Soviet Army in Berlin, because Soviet Army, of course, liberated Berlin from Nazis, and we were surprised that even though it was the Soviet Army that we didn't like because they occupied us, that people were. It was well maintained. It was beautiful. It was clean, and we were surprised how people were not. How should I say that? They took it for as a normal thing. It was just another army that liberated them. They never looked at them, those occupiers. When we saw memorials like that in Czechoslovakia, we were always thinking, oh, this is a monument to our occupiers. But over there it was different. So even that, it was in a nice park. The streets were clean, well paved. Buildings were painted, like with colors actually, other than grey. And they were the shop windows were huge panes of glass. Everything was clean, immaculate, and recently updated. You can see that the display in the windows hasn't been there for the last 20 years the same. It was updated, and people took pride of it. Beautiful cars on the street. So the trams were so quiet. The street cars on the street were so quiet compared to the rattling things that we had. So yeah, it was immediate difference. Yes, of course we walked towards the Bundestag, the parliament, which is right next to Brandenburg Gate, but on the opposite side of the Berlin Wall. So where we were hours before on one side, we are now on the other side of the Berlin Wall, and able to see it from the other side. And we saw the lit up streets and stores with beautiful windows that actually had stuff in them, and things like fancy electronics and things like fancy clothing, and it was an amazing sight. Walk to grocery store, and the selection, it was a shock. It was a revelation what shopping can even look like.
When you saw these differences, did it kind of spark some feelings about your life beforehand, what you had missed out on?
It was not that much. It was more, I wish I had that, or more like, I know I'm gonna have that eventually. So it was, I don't think it didn't feel like missing on anything. I know I missed, on travel and stuff that we were not able to do, but other than that, no, not things. Yeah, so we went back to, of course, we had to leave by the end of the day because they were closing the border crossing in the evening. So we went back, and the next day we went again to Brandenburg Gate. That was our last day in Berlin, and that's where we actually were able to cross next to Brandenburg Gate through the missing, or through opening in the wall. Yeah. the whole thing was so overwhelming that it wasn't probably until on the long train ride back from Berlin that I realized how much has changed from the moment we left until the moment we came back. The world has changed, and it took that long for me to realize that actually. I know we talked about it quite a bit with my friend on the train ride home. It was like things are changing, things will be different. We knew that things will be different from that moment on. Yeah, I realized that you have to do stuff. You have to try to do stuff in order to achieve something, and you cannot just let it go by wayside. Yes, so when there was a first opportunity for me to go abroad, I did immediately, and it probably stemmed from the moment that we saw the world coming together, or the barrier falling apart, that I knew that if you really want to achieve something, you just have to break it down and go for it. Yeah. The feeling is still there every time I think about new things opening. Every time I hear about stuff on news that there are places where people are suppressed and stuff, or oppressed and stuff. I think about the fall of Berlin Wall and about the fall of communism in general in Eastern Europe. So people today, young people today, who've never seen it, don't realize the value of freedom. The world is completely different when you live in a system that's oppressive, in a system that's dictating what you have to do, that doesn't allow you to have your own expression, that doesn't allow you to travel, see world, see information, hear information from multiple sources. People need to realize that is something that is worth protecting. We should never take our liberties for granted, because they are immensely valuable. And even people of my generation who have been through it and went through this period sometimes take it for granted that we just got few liberties. But it's not something that we should take lightly. I think it's something, and it resonates with me very much when I hear on the news that things that are happening that take away people's liberties wherever in the world it is. That this is something worth fighting for, and this is something that hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people celebrated on those days when, in the fall of '89, when all of these things were happening.